Hello, I'm Doug Holmes, the Mayor of Summerland, and welcome to episode 9 of the Mayor's Podcast. This month, we're going to talk about the Summerland electrical utility and the Okanagan's first utility-scale solar and battery storage facility. After 8 years of planning and project management, the Summerland Energy Centre officially opened this month. Joining me to shed light on everything is Jeremy Storvold, Director of Utilities. Jeremy, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks. Great to be here.
Now, Summerland is one of 5 municipalities in BC to own an electrical utility, the others being Penticton, Grand Forks, Nelson, and New Westminster. We all purchase power wholesale and resell it to local residents and businesses. Up until about 8 years ago, the Summerland electrical utility had been suffering from decades of underinvestment. Through our work in asset management, we knew that what we call the infrastructure deficit was much higher in our electrical system than it was in other infrastructure like water, sewer, and even the roads. That means it was older and in greater need of repair and replacement. In 2015, the Council of the Day put everything on the table and we reviewed all our options for the electrical utility. Those options included the idea of selling it off. That we'd consider selling the electrical utility upset a lot of people in the community. And Council agreed it would be in Summerland's best interest to keep the utility, but that we would need to invest in it. It also needed to be better managed. At the time, a lot of our electrical engineering work was contracted out. But Council said if we were going to own an electrical utility, then we needed somebody who knew how to run it. And that's when we hired you, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you. I remember that day talking with Summerland for the first time back in 2018. And at the time, I was the engineering manager for Yukon Energy up in the Yukon in Whitehorse. I started with the electric utility business when I was 18, right out of high school. And that was trenching in cable and as a laborer, digging ditches essentially for power cables and exposing faulted conductor and that sort of thing. And that was at 18. And, my career took me to the Northwest Territories where I was working on my first battery energy storage project. And that was also tied to a solar system. And it was a diesel plant. And this was a small remote community in the Arctic. And we had to replace the diesel plant, so we decided to replace it with a diesel battery energy storage system and a solar system. So I'd done one of these before, but back then, that was in around 2015. Back in those days, we had to design the system from scratch. You couldn't just buy a battery system off the shelf, which is effectively what we did here in Summerland. So we had to design that control system, and effectively, we had to code that ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I was the engineering manager behind that. So that was a good learning curve. And then I had the call with Summerland, 15 years after sort of starting with electric utilities. And it was a good call. And we talked about the state of the electric utility. And we talked about the solar project that was on the books. And I was keen to join the team.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you did. And we couldn't have done this without you.
Thank you.
So back in the time, with Council's renewed commitment to the electrical utility came this idea of generating some of our own power, obviously from renewable resources. We wanted to provide some stabilization to the grid, and we wanted to better control costs through peak shaving, which we'll talk about later in the podcast. We conducted some research and concluded that solar would be the best first step for us because it was a proven technology and relatively simple to implement. And also, Summerland is one of the best places in the province to take advantage of solar. We get at least some sunlight 305 days a year. And compare that to Vancouver, they get 289 days a year of sunlight. And even that, I think, is pushing it. But and in Prince Rupert, they get 250 days a year. So anyway, knowing that, having that information, Council lobbied the provincial government for funding to do a feasibility study. And in 2016, we received a $100,000 grant from the province from their rural dividend program.
Yeah, that's right. When I started, and all those things are true about choosing solar as a well-established technology and sort of those first steps. Those are all smart decisions. When I started, there was a conditional award on the $6 million grant, and the $100,000 grant was to do some of the work to prove that Summerland could do the project. And at the time when I was about to start, staff were working hard on all the conditions of that conditional grant, and we're wrestling with the project and how it should look, what it means, defining all the benefits to the community, just early planning. And actually, before I even arrived, they had sent me studies to review, and so I was doing that in my evenings up in the Yukon before I even came here. And so when I got here, I was able to sort of hit the ground running on the project because I had already been reviewing studies for them. The the $100,000 grant was funding a number of studies, but they were all sort of under the feasibility study umbrella, and they were looking at the grant wanted to know. The grant provider wanted to know what the capital cost of the battery energy storage system would be, what the replacement costs, what the schedule of replacement batteries would be, O&M costs, general cost benefit analysis, and they wanted to ensure that we had secured funding for the Summerland portion of the big grant. Um, there were system impact studies. We applied for that $100,000 grant for the purpose of getting the conditions removed on the $6 million grant. So we were in sort of this grant inception stage where we had grants to apply on grants. And so it was working really well for Summerland because there was very little out-of-pocket expense to plan the project and set it up. So other than some staff time, it was actually going quite well.
Yeah, and so as you said, all that work was one day underway, and so once we figured, yeah, we could do this, we applied to the federal government. That was in 2018 for a grant to actually engineer, procure, and construct the thing. And we asked at the time for $6 million. That was from the Canada Community Building Fund, which at the time was called the Federal Gas Tax Strategic Priorities Fund. And we agreed to put up to $1 million. We didn't end up spending that much, but up to $1 million from our electrical reserves for upgrades to our electrical system and building the road into the site, that sort of thing. So we received the full amount from the government on, as you said, based on conditions, and one of those conditions was finding a site, a location to build it. And in 2019, we met all those conditions, and an agreement was signed with the federal government. Now, in terms of the location, finding a perfect location for just about anything in Summerland is pretty much impossible. Whether we're talking about a dog park, a food processing hub, high density housing, I mean, you name it, it's a challenge finding suitable land. So an array of solar panels is really no different. And after much contentious debate on council and in the community, it was decided to build the Energy Centre at the site of the former municipal works yard on the toe of Cartwright Mountain. And once that decision was made, we could move ahead. And in 2022, following a competitive tendering process, we awarded the project contract to a joint venture of Wildstone Construction Group and Skyfire Energy, along with a number of local subcontractors.
That's right. Actually, choosing that joint venture turned out to be a really good decision. And right now, all indications show that they're going to deliver on all their commitments. So the project's gone really well in that regard. But to get to that point and have a successful project, multi-million-dollar project, it sort of all begins in those early planning stages in the project, and with particular focus and attention on the RFP, the request for proposals that Summerland put out. And that request for proposals is just a ton of work, and it's good work that you really, as a project lead, you need to focus on. and there's objectives that need to be put into there for the project. Past work that's been done on the project, all the past studies are included in there. What's the budget? How much insurance does the company need to hold? What's the schedule for the project? Then there's the whole RFP process, hosting site meetings, proponent briefings, preparing addendas, covering what you expect for conflict of interest, qualifications for the bidders. What other qualifications need to be? Who do you actually want working on this thing? Terms and conditions, proposal content. So like that's just RFP stuff. And haven't even talked about solar yet. That's just sort of RFP contract type of work. Legal stuff. And so you start getting into actual solar specifications and specifying the solar system. What are the arrays supposed to look like? What do we want to see for inverters, AC combiners, all the electrical stuff? How we want to see connections? How much capacity should it be? How big should it be? The control building, all the control systems, on and on and on. And it's all super technical and actually involves over 1,000 pages of work and sweat and tears and just grinding away on every little detail. In an RFP, if you leave out that you want a light over the doorway, then you won't get a light over the doorway.
So could I interrupt here?
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up with, I'll just put it out here. We should mention it. We ended up with a 412 kilowatt solar array, a 1 megawatt of battery storage, and a 3.56 megawatt power supply, along with some upgrades to our existing system.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeremy, could you explain what does all that mean? What have we got here up on the hill?
Yeah, it's basically the benefit to Summerland is called a concept called peak shaving and just pure power generation from the solar panels. And so it's really an electric utility cost savings measure. And so the solar panels are really straightforward. They generate energy, and every kilowatt hour we generate there is a kilowatt hour we don't need to buy from our power wholesaler, FortisBC. And in terms of so solar is really simple. We just have a meter there, and we read the meter at the end of the year. We'll see how much power we generated, and we can translate that into how many dollars we saved. On the peak shaving side, so this is the battery energy storage system where we store energy. That is a little more complicated. So peak shaving, basically, as a concept, is this sort of theory where just to bring it kind of into the home. So you go to work during the day, and at home you're hardly using any power because no one's there, and your stove isn't running, and you don't have the heat turned up maybe, and all those systems are just kind of idling there. But when you get home after work and the kids are home after school and the house starts to fill with people and you start to use power and turn on the lights, you have this sudden power demand. And as a utility, we pay for that power on demand. And so if you look at last month's power bill, which was about $800,000 that Summerland had for October, about 40% of that is this demand charge. So how much, basically it's our dinner time demand. And so what we do with the batteries is we start to release power to our grid at that dinner time. And we're able to shave the peak of our power demand, and which is really a pretty well established way for electric utilities to save money now. Lots of utilities are doing this. We're not the first. We won't be the last. And our power demand costs are about $15,000 per megawatt per month. And so that would be the theoretical maximum that a peak shaving would save for someone.
So the idea is that we have to pay for our capacity to reach the peak demand every day, whatever that peak demand is, whether we're using that, even if we're only using that peak amount, for 1 hour a day.
Yeah.
We have to pay that amount for the whole day. Is that correct? And so if we can like chop off the top of the mountain, so to speak, then it lowers the price
for the whole month.
For the whole month.
For the whole month and for the whole year. So there's a monthly charge, and then there's a yearly charge based on our absolute worst day, worst minute of the year as well. So with the system we have in place, our target is to shave that particular day every year, and our worst day of the month every month. Yeah.
Good. Now, the Summerland Energy Centre, it aligns with federal and provincial plans to meet future energy needs and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And the federal government makes no secret that it supported the project in order to showcase sustainable technology and clean tech. Sean Fraser, the federal minister for infrastructure and communities, he said that he wants communities from coast to coast to coast to look at what Summerland has done and draw inspiration from it for their own climate action initiatives. So that's really, good to hear. And certainly, if we're serious about electrifying our economy, which we'll need to do if we want to address climate change, then we have to figure out how to generate a lot more clean electricity than we do today. But right here down at ground level here in Summerland on day-to-day operations of the Summerland electrical utility, as you said, the exciting thing, I think, is about how the Energy Centre is an opportunity for us to provide that stabilization to the grid and control our costs through peak shaving, as you were saying. I think this is the primary reason all those years ago that the council decided to start investing in our electrical utility. If we didn't own and operate an electrical utility, then maybe the case for producing some of our own power wouldn't have been so strong. But this is a project that directly benefits every single person in Summerland. Paving a road doesn't benefit everybody directly because not everybody will drive on that road. And, developing hiking trails or installing a dog park, it doesn't benefit everybody directly because not everybody hikes or has a dog. But while these things are still important, it's important to invest in these projects because of the whole principle of the common good, and we want to, build community, create community. Infrastructures that directly benefit every single member of the community are in fact really extremely rare. But as it happens, the Summerland Energy Centre is one of those rare exceptions. Every resident, business, farming operation in the community needs electricity. So we all benefit from stabilizing the grid and controlling the costs of electricity.
Yeah, no, I agree. It definitely benefits all Summerlanders, since we're all customers of the electric utility, and myself included. I live here in Summerland with my family, just another level up is that it's also in keeping with council's energy strategy. So that energy strategy, just to refresh you, includes the fleet vehicles, electrification of our fleet vehicles, completing the voltage conversion, modernizing our electric meters to give customers more information about their consumption. It included a battery energy storage system, EV chargers around town, micro hydro, that's in-pipe turbines, our distributed generation program, which we already have, and a solar plant, along with a bunch of other little things too. And it's all part of that overall strategy for energy in the community. The electric utility business overall, like the industry, is predicting really high demand increases because of the sort of electrification of everything, and specifically electric vehicles. And just I even heard on a podcast last week mention, just someone in the industry had mentioned that they had read a study that a latest study for North America that they think demand is going to go up by 3 times. So electric utilities need to prepare for that. So that may or may not be true, but one of the solutions to dealing with this demand is energy storage. And so battery energy storage is just one type of storage system. And so it will be in our day-to-day lives. Summerland's early adopter of that, but over the decades, I'm certain that it'll show some foresight on our part, and it'll even be in everyone's homes eventually. So we're certainly on the path of where the electric utility industry is heading.
Yeah. And speaking of storage, you mentioned our distributed generation program, which a lot of people call net metering, and that's where residents can connect their own home energy sources to the grid, the Summerland grid. And talking to some of these customers, they kind of envision a future where they're able to charge their electric vehicle during low energy demand and have the idle car feed electricity back into the grid at peak demand.
Yeah.
And so these electric vehicles then become electric storage units. So that's
Yeah, it will happen.
yeah, that's very interesting. So yeah, that's an interesting future. And I should also add that the location of the Summerland Energy Centre up on Cartwright Mountain there, it sets the stage for an adjacent eco-village, which will be built to special environmental certifications that promote objectives like reduced water and energy use, the protection of threatened species, and healthy lifestyles. And so that's also something that we're looking forward to down the road. And all of this fits in with Summerland's image as a clean, green, forward-thinking community. If you look at some of our local businesses, we have sustainable farming, we have organic wineries, we have an organic bakery, a refillery and zero waste store, one of BC's leading solar panel installation companies, Canada's first certified carbon neutral tour company was here in Summerland. So it's not surprising that the Summerland Chamber of Commerce they give out a annual Environment and Sustainability Excellence Award. So it's it really fits in with Summerland, I think. And actually, speaking of awards, this past September, we should mention the Community Energy Association presented the District of Summerland with a Climate and Energy Action Award for the development of our energy centre. It's the second time in the last 3 years that Summerland has received this award. Back in 2021, we were recognized for our corporate climate initiatives, and now with the Energy Centre, we're being recognized for what we're doing for the whole community.
No, that's good. We're happy to receive those awards. It's a good honor. And just a shout out to the councils over the two councils that I've been working for. It does take some nation building mentality to push these projects forward and to be sort of future thinking. And I think that's good long-term thinking, and investing in the electric utility is good long-term and good business sense from council. And so definitely support that. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you for dropping in and to talk about the electrical the utility and our brand new Summerland Energy Centre. I just want to say congratulations to you and all of your crew for developing what we can be proud of is the first utility scale solar and battery storage facility in the Okanagan. And so that's great, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the results of our peak shaving down the road. I'm Summerland Mayor Doug Holmes, and you have been listening to the Mayor's Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.